What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? I'm BDLM, coming with my buddy J4Y, bringing you episode number 63 of our Dota on a Man podcast. What is going on, man?
Hey, what's going on, ladies and gentlemen? I am J4Y, and with me is BDLM, and I am messing up everything for him.
Can you just not steal my thunder? That'd be fantastic. I was just gonna say, I love that I can actually sort of belt out the intro because I have this fancy new mic that my Ramster 4 happened to shout out to. I'm also stoked that I have it. +1 to me. So good. Yeah, I'm doing swell. How are you doing, man?
Doing pretty good. We were both agreeing that we were both a little on lack of sleep as of recently. So I think you wanted to call it the NyQuil Here we go already. The NyQuil cast. But hopefully we can continue our awesome energy levels to make it throughout the whole episode here and bring you guys the episodes you know and love.
I am sleepy, but I'm also super stoked because obviously last week we talked about the patch and all the changes that happened, and there was actually a lot of really cool stuff that happened this week sort of because of that, and both the pro scene and then just us actually getting to play around with the patch. And there's also one other really cool thing that I wanted to bring to your guys' attention. Starladder actually put together a documentary about the International, or it might not have been Starladder, but the producers of Starladder, blah, blah, blah. Put together a documentary called The International History of One Tournament. It was all in Russian, and my Russian is a little rusty, a tad, so I didn't watch it. But now they're actually English subtitles, so if you go to YouTube and you look for that documentary, you have to turn on the subtitles through YouTube, which I can admit that I did not realize you had to do it first. But it was actually really interesting, and not to spoil too much of it, but sort of from the get-go, they almost sort of tell you, Vlad is a big part of the documentary, and he's like, yeah, nobody liked Dota 2 at first. The first time they saw it, they thought it was crap, and then when they actually got to play it, they thought it was even worse. And it's kind of neat that it sort of started like that for the International 1 and everybody's first impression of Dota 2, and you get to sort of go through the documentary and see how people's minds changed because of just how the game was developing, and really it seemed like in a big part just because of what Valve was able to do, but it's really neat to just get to see the International from that other perspective and from that just the development of the game to this point.
Yeah, that does sound very intriguing, and thank God for the subtitles so us ignorant Americans and other people can, not have to study other languages to actually comprehend things. But no, I think that sounds really interesting, and you really threw off guard when you first started telling me about it and telling me how that, because you were making a good point. When we first saw the first International, and we were watching these Dota games, we were just so thrilled because we were coming from the world of here's a new Earth, and we were kind of just seeing these new graphics, seeing our old memories coming alive again from Dota 1, because we hadn't played Dota 1 in so long. Whereas you're saying these professionals who are transitioning from Dota 1 to Dota 2, they obviously, yeah, it's shiny, it's pretty, but to them they care way more about mechanics and play and functionality. And like you were saying, it really wasn't that smooth at all. It was actually really difficult for them to kind of pick up and get used to it, and they didn't like it, and it's just so interesting to really actually find out that that was the case.
Yeah, and one of the other things I really liked about it was that they even really sort of made a point to say that because Valve was so ready to back their product by saying, hey, $1 million to play this game that nobody's really gotten to see yet, and that a lot of the teams actually had not played it until the International 1 started. So to sort of take that into perspective and say this company's going to go, hey, $1 million to whoever can do it, really seemed to set up the fact that people are like, oh, we should probably take this game seriously. We might want to actually transition from Dota 1 and transition to Dota 2 ourselves, which further supports the game. If you're a professional team and you're going to say, hey, we want to make this a profession, that's obviously going to put pressure on the developers to try and make it as solid as they can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, definitely. And obviously I had full confidence in Valve, but that's because I've played their other titles and not all these other people have. So I knew they were going to take it and run with it. And getting Ice Frog involved obviously was a large part of it as well, because he is the mastermind, or one of them, that put it all together. So They definitely, well, obviously they've taken it to great levels at this point. Wasn't there also another documentary? Didn't they release at the end of TI3? They showed it to the people who bought tickets or something?
Yes, I believe I saw a Navi documentary. I don't know if it's the same one, but it was about some internationals. I've watched 2 documentaries so far on Dota 2. I found them both fascinating and awesome, and I hope that there's more stuff like it. But I definitely 100% BDLM approves of watching the documentary and taking a real legit look at a sport. Really cool. But we also this episode really kind of wanted to just sort of put our own personal feelings into the patch, because we tried so hard to not like nitpick and say something about everything in the patch notes, but everything was so cool, and there was some pretty big stuff that we just sort of overlooked or weren't able to get to. So we wanted to sort of talk about some of those things and just how they have transitioned into our own play. And the one that I really want to talk about, which I'll also use to shamelessly plug my Twitter account that I actually just started up at BDLM Dota, all one thing. I haven't actually tweeted yet because I don't know what a good first tweet is. It's awkward, right? Like, just to start, like, Jay is my only follower right now, so it's kind of weird that I'm gonna just, hey, but I'm totally gonna use that to talk about some cool games I'm watching whenever they happen, talk about neat stuff that I happen to, my musings on Dota, and also to keep you guys informed about what I've done, what I've started, a 100 straight games of Venomancer, because I'm just so in love with the changes that they made to him, adding the Poison Sting to the wards, rescaling Venomous Gale, all really cool stuff, and Jay has gotten to suffer through it with me. Not suffering. It's actually a pretty decent
Actually, I was going to say, every time you've played with me with him, we've won, so it's not so much, it's not like 100 Meepo games in a row or something where you actually have to learn a hero you haven't played, and then we suffer dramatically. And you have to also put an asterisk on the end there, because it's 100 if available.
Listen, there was one time, right, that you would think that I would, start to pick it up as I was clicking the same hero every time. I'd learn where he is. I was slow on the draw one time, and I had to play Doom, which I was thrilled, I can live with that. Hey, but yes, 100% if I don't get...
you can customize the hero selection thing. You know that, right? You can make the portrait of literally the whole screen, and that's all you have. And
part the sea, throw everybody out to the sides, Venomancer, front and center.
Just staring you back in the face like, let's go, buddy, let's do it. But yeah,
high five, Venomancer. Lock it in.
We've been playing some games for sure. I admit that I have been guilty of not as much. I've gotten into the Hearthstone beta. I won't talk about it all. It's a Dota podcast, I get it, but I'm just saying I've been a little distracted. But I definitely intend to play some more. Gina Bean, I know, our friend, invites me every day, at least 3 times a day. So eventually I've got to get into some of these games. But I have played definitely a decent amount. And actually I played a lot of the support / I haven't really played much middle at all, which is a little strange to me because I'm used to playing a lot of middle, but I've almost kind of given it up and let other players do what they want to do, and that kind of... if you do that, let's be honest, you know where you're probably going to end up for the most part. It's going to be support. So, not that it's a bad thing, though. I mean, there's supports have gotten buffs in this patch, and that's why I was kind of curious anyways. My first game was a Lich game, and I really absolutely loved it. And, because I discussed that last episode about how I got the Tranquil Boots and everything, and I thought that was an interesting change. But we have a friend who, literally every game, just like you're picking Veno, he picks Lich. So pretty much that tri-lane's already determined at that point.
Yeah, well, I will say, though, that there has actually already been some success on the off-lane Lich in the pro scene. And so that's actually great, and something that I want to talk about when we were talking about Lich, too, because... that's something that obviously used to get done, and you were just thinking, like, oh, yeah, it's just to completely destroy the experience going the enemy team. It's nice now to get to sort of see that from the other side. You're still pretty much going to be doing that, because obviously you're not going to be denying creeps that are right up on the front lines next to enemy champions where they're going to get some of that experience. You're probably going to be doing it by your tower, or behind your tower, where they're not going to get anything anyway. And now you're just getting this boost, which is actually a pretty decent amount, even at level 1. And because of where the lanes meet now, the creeps in the lane meet, if you're denying that first creep, the next wave is going to be so close to your tower that you're going to be able to actually stand there, get yourself to level 2, and by the time you're far enough away from your tower that you're kind of a little sketched out, you at least have a slow available. You at least have some kind of mechanism other than the sacrifice, and you can propel yourself to level 6 to be an important part of the game.
Yeah, he's definitely become a strong part, and I know you haven't seen, you said you haven't really seen him as much on the pro scene, but I have. I mean, I've watched scattered games here and there. Unfortunately, I can't reference specific examples, but I have seen him actually picked and banned, and maybe they were more in some amateur kind of tournaments and not necessarily the LGD China or Tong Fu or something, but. He is getting used. He's getting people are recognizing him for his power, and obviously this is just since he's been so changed. He is a powerful hero now, and that's something they have to deal with. I mean, I think when I mentioned last episode is the fact that he got major buffs over the past couple patches. It's just that it wasn't enough to push him over, and this was finally the straw that broke the camel's back, if you will. This is the one that was like, all right, we can't ignore him anymore. We really have to give this guy a try.
The other thing that I really like about his change too is it's sort of similar to Broodmother for me in a way, is that both of these heroes still have their sort of one fatal flaw. Like for Broodmother, it's the fact that you can just farm the spiderlings. Obviously, she can now path them through trees and try and get them out of harm's way, but you can still essentially wind up picking up more gold because you're fighting a Broodmother. And Lich, it's the same thing where Lich's sort of problem when he was getting run in the offlane before is that he would deny creeps. It would pull the creep wave in, so teams just started going, we'll just destroy the towers, and there's nothing you can do about it. I guess the thing you're getting here is that at least Lich is getting some experience now for denying the creeps, so he's not going to be so far behind and giving up so much to the enemy team. But both of these heroes sort of still have that flaw to them, but they're like strengthened and bolstered sort of around that to sort of not directly make up for it, but to give them some more viability in their unique components.
Yeah, no, definitely. And due to the fact that some of these jungle people have been slowed down, not necessarily in power of the creeps, but experience-wise, that they're not going to be as effective with pushing from the jungle. I mean, it's definitely been a lot going on here. Lich, like you said, Bob Vino definitely getting picked up as well in the pro scene. I don't know that I've seen Vino bans coming out necessarily, but I have seen him get picked up. And, once again, no real surprise. He's always been a relatively strong hero, but after getting these changes, it's just made him that much more effective in team fights and pushing. And, his ultimate now finally hitting everything it should have probably been hitting a while ago. I don't know. I mean, since you're the one that's played him, well, how many? Probably 10, 12 games at this point. What are your thoughts on him right now?
On Venomancer?
Yeah.
I like him a lot. I like him a lot. And it's not only just for that support role. I've actually played him a little bit mid, and it's kind of hilarious how much damage Gale does when you level it up. I mean, the initial part of reading his set of patch notes for me was, oh man, Poison Sting on the wards, that's so cool. Like, now it's important for you to sort of be alive because now you can throw out more wards and you're able to apply that slow. You're going to have to micro your wards a lot more now. It's going to be important. But when you actually just stick points into Poison Sting and Venomous Gale, you do a ton of damage. I actually, one game, went up against a Necrolite and just hit 6, just dropped everything on him, and he couldn't do anything to live through it. It was pretty brutal. So it's nice to sort of get to see Venomancer have this sort of dual capacity to be able to be heavy nuker or to be the sort of push or defend bot that he's been in the past.
Yeah, I was going to say, middle, and, this that goes back to our Han days where we used to watch competitive Han, and there was a player who played the hero that was the counterpart to that so much, Trixie, who you'll recognize if you like Team Fnatic over there, but he used to play that Venomancer port middle very often, and he played it so much and was so good at it, in fact, that they made a whole skin in his honor. I mean, it was like that well known for him, but still, I definitely actually am curious. I kind of like the middle Venomancer. It's definitely can be effective if obviously you don't try to take it too late game. I mean, he's not going to serve a hard carry role as well as other people would, but That being said, he's going to get you that early mid-game strength. Getting that team fights at level 6, his gank potential is scary good if he can drop that ulti on multiple heroes. Getting that try or do lane and drop that on a couple heroes, there's going to be some deaths flying around, that's for sure.
And I mean, not even that. I mean, that's of course, obviously the ultimate's a huge chunk of damage, but that's the other thing too I like about how the Gale was rescaled is he just feels capable of doing so much damage and applying such a heavy slow before 6. And the cool thing too about the way Vino is now is he's great rune control, at least in the fact that if you are trying to race somebody else to it, unless they have blink, you have the potential to throw a ward out and deny the rune, or you can just try and grab it and use your ward to slow if you put an early point into it. I definitely sort of like getting at least the 1 point in it into your ward. But there's a lot of neat, fun stuff you can do now that those wards slow. And I definitely am looking forward to seeing Venomancer come into the game and, hopefully in more than just that support potential, even though I do think that's still probably what he's going to be mostly. My question to you, good sir, is now that we've sort of talked about both these supports, Captain J4Y, if you had to pick one of these supports, which one, or not supports, one of these heroes, if you had to pick one of these heroes, which one do you think you would favor in the general purpose scenario?
That is a great question. They both have somewhat, I'd say, similar strength and somewhat similar weaknesses. Like, for example, their ultimates are huge team fight oriented spells, but all their damage is magic damage. So a BKB will definitely ruin both of these guys' days. The Venomous Gale and the Frost Novas both also are slows, heavy slows. They're AoE. I mean, they're so similar. I definitely would say the only way they really differ is the fact that Venomancer is more like pro push and Lich is more like not pro push. I mean, the Frost Armor will help in a way, but not necessarily in the regards you want. And since I'm more of an aggressive nature, I would go the Venomancer route just because I like his style, I like his gank potential, and the fact that his ultimate doesn't depend on other people to be in the area. I think makes him maybe that much more of a threat like that. But we've seen Lich ults just be devastating. So you definitely, you can't discount it. But I think for at least my kind of style and the way I'd like to play, that Venomancer would definitely be up my alley. And how about you? A2?
I'm not sure. I mean, I'm maybe a little biased towards the Venomancer, but I was just thinking as you were saying that, I had the pleasure of watching one full pro game this week. I played more than I watched for a change, and there was a game between Empire and Mouse Sports where they actually ran an aggressive tri-lane Nightstalker. And I was just thinking about, the sacrifice, and I was like, man, obviously you're talking about Venomancer being pro push. Lich is really more like sort of pro carry, being able to throw that armor on them, be able to sacrifice, get their levels up. And I'm just thinking now, man, like, if you were able to run like Lich and Nightstalker in a lane, if you're putting the points into the ice armor and into the sacrifice, you're helping him get his levels up so that he can be even more of a threat. I mean, in that game, you actually see there are some kills that go back and forth before the 4-minute mark in that lane. But Nightstalker is level 4 as the 4-minute mark hits, and he just immediately goes for Lifestealer. The second nighttime hits, he's just all over him, and they pick up a kill. And it's really neat to see, I guess just maybe transition a little bit into Nightstalker, how he has changed because of the day-night switch. It's not, I think, as cut and dry as it may seem to some people. It's really interesting to see how he functions now that his daytime period is shorter. There isn't that eternal nighttime. Darkness is now the situational spell, as you'll see in that game. Darkness is about, okay, I'm about to go in, pop darkness, just to decrease their vision. And I'm just thinking about how that would work with sacrifice in the game. I actually really want to try that myself and see if we can get someone to play Nightstalker.
Oh, I love Nightstalker.
Buddy that always plays Lich.
I love Nightstalker. I really do. He's pretty much the definition of aggression. I mean, if he doesn't go aggressive when that nighttime hits, he's not really going to be that effective. I mean, that's his whole point is to snowball. I mean, he could hard farm a lane, sure, but what hero can't hard farm a lane? I mean, at that point, I'd much rather have a Sven or something that just brutalizes and cleaves and kills everyone late game. So, no, you pick Nightstalker, and he doesn't have to be mid. You know, he could be a safe lane. That's perfectly fine, as long as he's aggressive during that evening. Actually, I was listening to a cast, and it's kind of interesting. I don't remember who said it, but it might have been Lumi or something, but either way, it was about the change from 6 to 4 minutes, actually kind of hurting him very early game, in the sense that when it's 4 minutes in, he is not at that level 6, level 7 mark, especially level 7. Level 7 is obviously when he's really at his strongest point in the game, because he's usually ahead of levels than other people. His Void is maxed out. He's hitting like a truck with that thing. And, you've got enough levels to where you really can burst people down. At that level, at the 4 minute mark, you're not really there yet. You're still kind of investing some points here and there. You know, you might not have the items like boots as well as a bottle or something at that point. So, it might have hurt his very first nighttime. Now, of course, after that, it's not so bad. But that was just an interesting point he brought up.
I'm curious to see how it averages out across the board, but I will say in this game in particular, like I said, that there were some kills went back and forth before the 4 minutes, so maybe it's not a great case study of like what Nightstalker is actually able to do at the 4 minute mark. But when you see him in that sort of aggressive tri-lane scenario, it's 3 against 3. He's able to get all the farm at least. 4 minutes, you could probably get yourself some boots, and I think if you were like comparing what Nightstalker has versus like a support. If you have a squishy support in that lane, even if you just do have 2 points into Void, like you're still going to be able to do tremendous damage, and the item disparity might be greater because the 8 or the 6 minute night, that's 2 more minutes of time to potentially get up your boots or get up some more basic stats on these support heroes that are potentially weak targets to the Nightstalker. So I'm curious to see how that would work out in a more realistic or a better case study of the lane.
Yeah, now that Smoke is essentially buffed too, he can definitely be more effective on the roam. Now the thing is though, whenever you're against a Nightstalker and you're on a competent team, you're going to be aware when he's missing from the lane he's in, and that's when you have to play. But that's the thing; it does affect your playstyle to a degree. It's kind of like a Pudge missing. I mean, it's the same thing, like where you're like, oh god, we need to be hugging our tower or very, very safe with warding, because if we're not careful, we get one Void and anything else in this lane is going to kill us. So, I mean, it does kind of put that fear into you, in a way. I guess his part of his kit is to scare people, but, that's... I don't know. I've actually seen a couple builds. I don't know if you have a particular favorite route with him. I know you haven't played him, but, from maybe thinking about it. But the last 2 Nightstalkers I've seen kind of, not right away, but pretty much rushed Aghanims. It seems to be almost like coming back as one of his big items. Is that because of the new nighttime, or what's going on here?
I don't know. I've always thought that's a strong way to go, and I think that's probably of the times that we've seen Nightstalker, I would say a high percentage chance you're getting an Aghanims, or at least a fair % chance, because obviously that's a big part of what makes him unique is that ability to get clear sight, and especially now that you're reducing the amount of vision that the enemy has with darkness, even on wards, like that's kind of crazy to think about. Just the disparity between the 2 teams once you pick up Aghanims. The game that it was Mouse Sports versus Empire. Mouse Sports picked it up. Unfortunately, Syndron did not play it. I was sad. But he wound up going for Heaven's Halberd. His build was actually Basilius to Drums to Heaven's Halberd, which was good in that situation. I definitely do like having Drums on him because, I mean, it's just good general stats, and I love that item anyway. But Nightstalker is a little mana hungry. After you just sort of drop your combo, you're kind of out, you're spent. So it's just nice being able to pick up an item like that's going to give you attack speed, movement speed, and more mana to play with. So I don't know if I have a favorite build on him necessarily. I think that the AC is a nice item on him. I think that the Aghanims is great on him. He's I think a much better hero now because of just that change to his ultimate, because before I think he had a lot of potential in his build, and now he sort of seems to have more laning potential and more utility to him.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. I definitely think. I mean, it's obvious Theogenes was essentially more or less buffed with this patch. I mean, he's going to have more frequent unobstructed view, like you were kind of saying. So it's really nice to work out with him. Obviously, it also gives him a lot of stats. And for those who don't know, by the way, in the cast, basically it's unobstructed vision at night. So trees and terrain don't block his vision. So he just sees everything to a degree, more or less. But yeah, I don't know. We've seen in the past like armlet builds if he wants to do more auto attack damage early game. I mean, we've seen all sorts of things. So obviously, anything can go. Also noticed this. I mean, I think it's funny. I'm just trying to think. When's the last time you saw a Vanguard get picked up by like anyone in the pro scene? Like anyone. I can't even think of a Vanguard getting used in the past. Maybe year, not year, but I don't know.
It's certainly been a while.
Yeah.
I will say that in watching that documentary again, they had some nice clips from the past internationals and games, and there was one in particular where from International 1 where Beastmaster had a Vanguard, and I remembered thinking like, oh yeah, Vanguard Beastmaster, that sounds legit because nobody's gonna be able to kill him. And it's like it's so funny how that's not an item anymore.
Nope.
And I mean, obviously, it got buffed in the patch slightly. It's got more block to it. I don't know if that helps it a ton. I mean, it's a situational item. I feel like I almost want to say in most scenarios, I feel like I would just want to go for a heart, unless I really needed the Ring of Health right off the bat, and in which case I'm like, well, I got the Stout Shield, I got the Ring of Health.
And now there's
just
just so many items. Like I don't know, not so many, but now that Lycan Sphere especially got buffed, like I don't know, maybe the Ring of Health would be better used in something like that. I don't know. It just feels like it's just felt so weak, like you said. But I don't know. It was a random thing to bring out. But since I saw, I was like, I haven't even thought about it. But yeah, that item is gone.
I think it's like neat. Maybe if I was gonna like the item, if it was sort of your I want to crush early game, pre-heart amounts of gold. If you were like a Nightstalker that's being super effective, and you just sort of go like, well, if I get that much health and they have a lot of physical damage and I'm blocking 80% of the time, I could just sort of like the Beastmaster thing. I'm just going to be so durable that there's nothing they're going to be able to do to me, and I'm going to be regenning while I'm running around between the lanes. I can just sort of put the nail in the coffin, go like Vanguard and Vlad's, and who is going to stop you really? That's kind of an interesting thought, and that might be the only time that I would sort of be pro Vanguard.
I was trying to honestly think. I was like, well, maybe the heroes that used to get it, like let's say Spectre, Phantom Lancer, I don't know, things like those kind of heroes. I think in the past they sometimes would just instead vie for like Trank Boots because they were so effective at keeping them sustained in the lane that they didn't need to get a Vanguard. They could just get the Trank Boots and eventually decide to get something else to help them out a long way. But now that Trank Boots have been changed up, I mean, I'm not saying it's going to bring Vanguard back in the game, but it definitely could give it once again a run for its money to get that sustain if they need that kind of regen for the battle.
Yeah, that's a super valid point. I actually really like that because that's the thing about the change to Trank Boots, right? Is it's now a specialty item. It has a single purpose or a more singular purpose than it did before. And so yeah, what's your answer to that if you're a carry? Well, Ring of Health to Battle Fury, no, then I got nothing. So you could either do like, I mean, there have always been builds in the past where it's like casual Vit Booster, and it's almost sort of like how like almost casual Yasha is for a lot of carries. Just picking it up to give me the health, and then all right, that's cool. I'll sit on that until I need a heart. But I would definitely like to see that item more. It would be neat to see it put to a particular purpose, and who knows, man? 10% block. Game changing, you never know.
Could be. I mean, like what Lena got 15 attack range this patch. I mean, these things could change the fate of the heroes for all we know. I don't know. That one I'd find really hard. If 15 attack range changed how much they got picked, I would be very impressed with that. Especially Lena, who's like has to wind up the softball in her arm and then like somehow lob it over there. I don't know.
That is a really ridiculous attack range,
it's
though.
Very tough. 650 is good. Very good, in fact. Very hard to top that.
It's a good...
Besides Sniper, might be top dog right there.
It's certainly one of the longer ones. I don't actually know the numbers for.
We don't have all the
longest
math
attack
here.
range,
No, we don't have all the math, but good enough.
What heroes did you kind of come out of the our patch discussion sort of wanting to talk more about?
Well, I wanted to give just a brief touch on Jakiro, and just the fact that of how now his liquid fire is a castable attack orb. So it's the same exact cooldown, doesn't cost mana, but now you essentially control it. So I mean, this is such an amazing change for Jakiro players, especially. Normally leveled up is not maxing liquid fire. Let's be honest, it's generally going to be either the dual breath or the ice path. And now you can just feel confident getting that 1 point, and then when you get to the tower or whatever or you're approaching the enemies and you want to get that slow or get that on them, now you have it available and you don't have to worry about last hitting or hitting creeps or accidentally doing this or that. You've got that all the time, and well, not all the time, but you know what I mean, the cooldown. Mm-hmm. So I think that's actually just a really nice not lifestyle, but you know what I mean. Like, God, I don't have the word, but you know what I'm trying to say here.
I think it's a deceivingly awesome change. Like, I feel like that's one that people will probably overlook, but I think it's actually really nice. Because like you said, it's at level 1, it's a 20-second cooldown. That's a bit long, and if you're a Jakiro player, there are times where you won't attack because you're like, well, the next creep wave, I'm going to be able to attack the tower, and I want to be able to slow its attack speed and put the damage on it. I mean, so I'm going to not attack, or I'd really like to not put it on the whole creep wave, just the second, but I would like to harass, that kind of thing. It's a really nice, and if you feel like being lazy and you want to turn it on, go ahead, but for the people that are really trying to get the most out of the heroes, I think it's fantastic, and it really frees up a lot of your thought to not have to worry about, is my next attack liquid fire?
Mm-hmm.
You can worry about other things.
That's what I was trying to get at without knowing the phrase I was trying to use. But how about, did you want to alternate? Did you want to say one that you thought was interesting?
Ooh. We should definitely talk about the Brewmaster change.
Mm-hmm.
And this one I don't know how much to love or hate it, because I feel very strongly in both directions, I must say. I will break my 100 games of Venomancer for custom games for research purposes only, I will say. And I did play a custom game with the Brewmaster.
We did win!
I will say, we great success.
Yes!
100% win rate. It's kind of silly, the amount of damage that you're able to do with the Brewmaster Oghanims. If you're not aware of what the change actually was, it's that getting Oghanims doesn't do anything that it used to do in increasing the stats or decreasing the cooldown or increasing the duration of the ultimate. It now gives all of your little Brewlings one of your abilities. It gives the fire, your dodge, and your crit. It gives wind, your drunken haze, and it gives clap to your earth spirit.
Gives the clap to the earth spirit. Uh-oh. Oh, that
well, yes, a round of applause.
Isn't he immune to certain effects? Like diseases? I'm just trying to make it work. Okay, sorry.
But it's actually really silly, the amount of damage that you're able to put out, because you blink, you clap, you split, you clap. You would probably want to haze first if you can afford to. But then you get to haze in a 200 AoE. The great thing about this too is when you lay that initial clap, obviously everybody's slowed. Mm-hmm. You have a high probability of keeping everybody in range for your second clap.
Right.
It's kind of ridiculous.
Right.
That's the love. The thing that I'm concerned about is that the problem with Brewmaster has sort of always been the cooldown on the ultimate.
Yeah.
It's, for me, never been the effectiveness of the spell or the hero. That's great. But especially, like, I just wonder how big of a swing with the greater swing is going to be that you can say, like, oh yeah, well, this makes it worth it, picking up the hero, getting the Oghanims. We were only going to kill 3 of them with the regular Oghanims before, and now we're going to kill 4, so worth it, worth not having that cooldown reduction. That's like the big X factor for me, and I don't know. I just don't know.
More kills plus less effective buyback equals win-win, possibly. I mean, remember we talked about that in the patch about how the buyback is really for emergencies only at this point. I mean, you can do it, but you're not going to get the gold anymore, and you're going to have that added length to your next death. So you really need to be in a tough spot, I think, to make use of that. So maybe if that's how it works, if it does net you more kills, perhaps, and right, how are you going to really evaluate that? Except you just kind of watch it happen and see what goes. But I'm a fan. I'd say it's not as it's not as simple like just okay, everything's just a little bit better with this Oghnims. It's more, and that's actually what a lot of these new Ognim things are. It's more just changing the way the spell works in a way, instead of it just being like, now Lion's Ult does 200 damage more, yay. It's like, it's actually really cool and interesting, and especially with a hero like Brew, where you already kind of want to be a good micro hero or micro player. Now obviously you've got that much more to work with, and it's not for the casual player, I'd say, but it's definitely one for the pros to really take advantage of.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much potential in this hero now. I mean, because you can sort of get multiple casts of everything. I mean, if you're able to throw off 2 hazes, you have the potential to at least get 2 heroes. The 200 AoE is actually pretty decent. I mean, I was able to hit a couple of heroes a couple of different times. So it's actually a bigger buff than I thought it was going to be. And then if you're just looking at like your just general Brewmaster stuff, he also gets 6 agility increase to his base agility. Actually pretty nice stat bonus, but he's such more a finesse hero, like you were saying. I really just want to get to see him played at the professional level, just to get to see what people are able to do with him, because if you're able to weave all those spells together, that's a powerful window of opportunity.
I don't think you mentioned the Drunken Haze AoE thing, did you?
I didn't directly. 200 AoE now on the Drunken Haze. So bigger. It's awesome.
Is that noticeable?
Oh yeah, it's noticeable. It's nice. It's very nice.
Mm-hmm.
It's just swell.
So they just got tons of AoE going around when they split, because you got the Thunderclap, you got the Drunken Haze, you've got the Immolation going. I mean, you've got a lot of AoE damage. I mean, he already had a lot of AoE damage, but now it's just like ridiculous at this point.
Yeah, and obviously, like, him and a Darkseer and Enigma together, you're going to be able to do some silly stuff.
Oh, yeah.
They're just going to have to bend over, because there's not a whole lot you can do about it. I guess the upside is that these things are a little bit more fragile with Ognim Scepter.
Yeah.
So you can say, all right, well, we can just turn and kill them. So maybe Brewmasters have to look more at getting the Ognims or not the Ognims, I'm sorry, the Vlads or the Assault Curious, just to try and get that durability up for all of them. I'm just really curious to see if this is enough to bring him back, because it's, like I was saying earlier, it's all awesome, it's all amazing, I love all of it, but it doesn't fix that Brewmaster problem that sort of took him out of competitive play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I think there's definitely a good possibility for him. I think players, let's be honest, players have missed him too. He they love the Brew, and
he's literally a teddy bear.
He is. He's a very not so cuddly, but very.
He's like Santa Claus in badger form. How is he not cuddly? He's just like,
that is disturbing. I don't want to think about that kind of image.
He's jolly, and
Anyways, moving on from that weird reference. Yeah, but one I tried during that same game was the Invoker, and I really did enjoy it. Now, granted, the way I was playing him in the practice game, I honestly felt like I didn't even get to take advantage of his buff. Well, one of his 2 buffs. The first one being the Invoke the max spells. He gets the 2 right away at level 3 instead of just 1. And that's really nice. I think it really depends on what's going on in your lane, obviously. But, I don't know. I was playing the Wex Quas, because that's just the normal build I go. And, I was already winning the middle lane, because I was playing against a bot. And, so that was probably a mistake in hindsight. But, being able to have both a Tornado and a Cold Snap at the same time would be just devastating to really, think about if you get Smoke Gang, forget it. That hero is dead no matter who they are. But I think it might also be really nice for the Exort builders as well, To be able to have that Sunstrike at any moment, and then also have maybe a Cold Snap or something to help him in the lane if he's getting pressured or to pressure the enemy. So I don't know. I think that's really nice. The EMP Restore is huge. I did not know how much of a factor that really was going to be. Now, yeah, you have to catch multiple enemies to really make it pay off, but that mana restore, 50% that it drains, it drains a ton of mana. So you can essentially go from like half mana to full if you hit enough players, and this kind of changes a build for him. He'd like to get that mana regen somehow, maybe early on, maybe a Yule's, maybe a Sheepstick with the Void Stone going. But now if you can land that EMP and it's powerful enough, you can feel safer to go Oghanims maybe instead, or even go more of an attack damagey build that we've actually kind of seen starting to happen here.
Yeah, I mean, we sort of touched on it a little bit last week, but I mean, I think just for like you were saying with the Exort build, just having both Sunstrike and Cold Snap available is just like silly to think about, that you have this global presence, and then you also have something to help you control the lane. Obviously, one's going to be stronger than the other, but just to be able to have both of those at your disposal is awesome. You don't have to be so worried about, oh, did I waste, my spell here? Or, you have the potential to weave multiple spells together, and then also have that dual presence. And I like the mana restore like you were talking about on the EMP, just to sort of bring Quaswex back, because I feel like if you were going to have an Invoker in a game, it's probably going to be the Exort build. And I will say that I did get to see... I watched a couple half games, which didn't... is always unfortunate to not get to see them all the way through. But I actually got to watch some from the Nexon League, where Lich was a ban. So, yay to our boy Lich for being that potent. And a dual lane, safe lane Invoker. Not that maybe the Korean scene is the most polished of metagames, or the most prevalent, but it's neat to see that these changes are really making an impact in a fledgling community where, these things might sort of affect the Western scene, because at least some of the drafts I've seen so far have been pretty close to the same, nothing too dramatically different than what we've been seeing in the past.
Yeah, no. So far, teams haven't really adapted yet, and I mean they're gonna slowly work their way through it. And it's not necessarily meaning that all the heroes that got buffed are now going to be in every single game. That's not how it works. But at the end of the day, teams have strategies, and they're going to follow through with them. But I actually liked the safe lane Invoker. I was against one myself in an off lane Clockwork I was playing, and he was going that Exort build, and he was helping the other lane out from that safe lane because he'd get that Sunstrike down, and as well as last hitting the lane was no problem with him, of course, because he had the damage, and I couldn't really harass him out of the lane. I mean, he had the support also in case I ever got too frisky, and trying to get up in his face, and it just seemed to really work well. He actually went like a almost full attack build. He actually ended up going, besides the phase boots, he went the Hand of Midas, he went an MKB eventually, and just like really started to throw out some autos, and when he gets that Alacrity and Forged Spirits and everything else, minus armor there, you melt. Like, it's very, very easy to die. So he is one of the few in-heroes that I really like in that safe lane, because he can get some really big items like a Sheepstick, like Oghanims, really benefit from that farm and still help his team immensely in the late game.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's, like you were saying, one of the few heroes I really like seeing a transition to like the auto attack carry. He's probably one of the few that can like just straight up do it. I mean, we always talk about some like Quap who can sort of do it, and she does a decent amount of damage if she goes like.
She only does it because she can blink. I mean, let's be honest. Besides that, she doesn't have that many great reasons going for her.
Yeah, so I guess you have OD or whatever, but really a neat sort of niche for that hero, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing him more. And I definitely think he has some viability. I wish I could remember what team it was, but I remember. It might have been Eternal Envy's team, Speed Gaming.
Mm-hmm.
Mentioning how they would even be willing to switch their roles around if Invoker became prevalent because one of their players was such a good Invoker. And so I'm kind of curious to see if that's enough to maybe bring about some change. Be interesting.
Wow. Yeah, that'd be something else, too. Hey, Dead D, once again. very known for his Invoker.
We did see the WTF mode practice.
We did. Everyone in the world I think that video has over like 5 million views or something at least by now. It's pretty ridiculous. It's pretty cool to watch. Not gonna lie. YouTube Dendy Invoker. That's all you gotta do. But yeah, another hero that was kind of interesting that we didn't even like touch on at all was the Axe. He got actually some pretty decent changes. One of the longer lists of changes indeed, but essentially his Berserker's Call got a little bit of extra range. His Battle Hunger, the duration and damage got reduced. So I don't know how that really works out in the math world, but I feel like
no one does.
Just
except for mathematicians.
Less numbers in general, and you never want less. You always want more. Okay, that's how we think. The counter helix got a little bit buff, and also hits siege units now, which is really nice, especially if you're doing the whole going behind the tower thing. If you ever do that with Axe still, now you can clear even catapults and whatnot if you want to. But the main changes come with the Culling Blade. No longer goes on cooldown if it successfully kills a hero. The threshold did get reduced, but the Aghanim upgrade version is the normal amount that you're used to. And then the speed boost increased to 40% with a 300 extra AoE radius, and it applies to attack speed. I'm like, it almost feels like I'm reading these for the first time again because they're just so amazing. I'm so impressed with them. And the ally buff duration increased from 6 to 10 seconds, and the mana cost is reduced. And the mana cost reduction, huge by the way, 150 to 60 at the first rank. That's enormous because one of Axe's main problems, especially early game, is lack of mana. So now he can spin, Battle Hunger, and ult, and have enough mana to do all of those things.
I feel like they changed the trick of the one-trick pony. Like, Battle Hunger was kind of silly, right? Like, you would, even if you were in the jungle, you would put points in a Battle Hunger because you could kill big creeps with it, and then you could come and just put it on somebody in the lane and walk away, and you probably got a kill. So I kind of really like the refocus sort of into Culling Blade. I mean, it's been worked on obviously a lot in the previous patches. I think this is overall a buff. I mean, just being able to provide that 40% attack speed is sizable. He now has this ability to go from hero to hero, kill stealing. I mean, it helps everybody, so, you know, whatever. It serves its purpose. And like you said, I think the huge part is really, especially that level 1 mana cost reduction. And, you know, I'm just saying, Jay, why not you just go ahead and you get a Yule Scepter because now you move faster with it, right? You just knock people up in the air, they fall, you taunt them. I mean, that's new meta, if I've ever seen it.
We did see an axe with a Force Staff, and I wasn't feeling that as much as other things.
The Yule Scepter. No, that makes
Well, of course, the Yule Scepter's got to be the item of choice here. I don't know. I definitely like it. And like you said, the kill stealing, at least now it feels more justified when people do it. Like, before it was like, really, dude? It was almost like a Necroid ult when someone had 1% health. You're like, okay, that was just ridiculous. But now he gives buffs to his whole team in a 900 radius for 10 seconds, and since the mana cost is reduced, he can keep chaining them off, and he'll get multiple kills. He'll keep the buffs flowing. He may actually be more of a... obviously, he will be more of a threat in team fights, and you can't just really leave him alone after the taunt. You may have to worry about him being that, you know, that ulti threat. So... and I've always built Aghanims. Ever since they put that change in the game and they made him have that Aghanims upgrade, I was like, oh, hell yeah, I'm getting this thing every game. And it's just, it was great before, but now it's pretty much essential.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing, too, that I really like about all the changes is just by not putting so much emphasis on Battle Hunger being such a great spell, nerfing it, and increasing the abilities in Berserker's Call and Encounter Helix, is it feels like he is more... It makes more sense to me now that if you're going to be this hero that is going to be able to get in the middle of a fight and you're going to taunt everybody, wouldn't you want your spin to be the priority? Like, wouldn't you want those two components to be a big part of what your kit? Because obviously before, your Battle Hunger first, and then you're going to put a point in the taunt, and then you're going to want some Counter Helix. Now I'm thinking you go 1 point in Battle Hunger to get the speed, and then you could even prioritize the Berserker's Call and the Counter Helix and really be that initiator, be that AoE threat, get the land the killing blow with the culling blade, and then you just keep up the attack. And I think I just like that in theory a lot better than here's my trick and I'm done.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably still not level up Berserker's Call over the other ones just because you only gain a half a second, and that's pretty much all you gain from leveling it up, and mana cost. But definitely the counter helix, definitely not a bad idea. You gain damage and you reduce that global cooldown on it. So, I mean, honestly, that could be a transition for them, for players in general. But, you know, now especially that since the ultimate is cheaper, that still may make players want to get the Battle Hunger just because they're not as afraid to spam it, and they'll still have the mana for the ultimate at the end of the day. So who knows? I mean, either way, we gotta see him start getting picked up. That's the bottom line that we're getting at here.
Of course, yeah.
You know, and then at that point, we'll play it from there.
I guess the last thing that I want to say is as I'm looking at the numbers, the cool thing about that drastic mana cost reduction at level 1 is it's like it even encourages you to have that the double tap of like removing it off cooldown if you get the reset. Is that using it twice is still cheaper than it used to be using it once. So it feels more like that the movement speed and the attack speed is like a major part of the spell, and it's not just like, oh, it worked, so cool.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. So what do you have anybody else, or did you I guess you went through your 3, didn't you?
I went through my 3, but I was also kind of, I was just thinking, have the Lifestealer, I mean, he's still getting picked up, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but it seems like the open wounds nerf and infest nerf is actually pretty decent. Going from a 0.01 cast time to 0.2 is a rather large increase in cast time. It's like almost like the Leshrac change that obviously made Leshrac like non-existent in play. But I mean, he's such a strong hero that obviously that wasn't going to throw him under the bus. But I mean, have we noticed anything like that being a factor?
I don't know. I mean, it's obviously not like a huge one. I mean, like it is obviously by proportion to what it was before, and like you said, obviously that small cast time is enough to break a hero like Leshrac. But I mean, I've still seen Lifestealer be quite vicious, and you know the rage cooldown increase I think is a pretty big nerf too. But he almost I think is going to feel like a Darkseer to me, where it's like you're going to have to wind up doing these things that aren't about the numbers as far as what the spells literally do. It's going to be about, you know, the cooldown and maybe the cast time, and obviously, like we saw before in the open wounds, the dramatic reduction of the range, and it's scaling up with leveling the spell. So still a vicious hero, but I like the direction they're moving in, trying to sort of rein him in.
Can I just also say I have seen. You asked, all right? That's what you get for asking.
Okay.
You did not expect me to talk this much this episode. I know, I get it, but Luda's been picked up a lot from pro games I've watched already. Like, a lot. Like, not every game, but definitely frequently. And I'm not surprised, you know, especially with the cap being removed on the Eclipse Scepter. And the Moonglaive hitting people again and again, but I don't know. I mean, is that something that you kind of were hoping for, expecting?
Was second pick in that game of the Nexon League, like overall pick.
Mm-hmm.
So first pick for the team that picked her. Yes and no. I mean, I definitely think that glaive part is neat and it's cool and is enough to give her some extra oomph. But obviously she was always a deadly hero before. I'm kind of surprised to like see her get buffs because she's already fine. It's not a huge buff, right? Like it's more damage, but it's in certain situations, and obviously the Oghanims is one that you're probably not going to see all that often, although I think it'd be neat to see.
Yep. Like the Doom Oghanims.
Yeah, but I mean, the hero really close to that actually got some changes I don't think we also talked about last episode was Lycanthrope, getting the armor increase, the base damage increased by 5, the howl bonus increased, and the Wolves magic resistance increased. What do you think about those?
Well, I already said I think that he could possibly do a little bit better in the jungle with these extra damages and whatnot. Now, it's still going to be tough, obviously, but I don't know. He's always been a very strong hero. If he can get some good items up, obviously he's one of the few that can kill Roshan with the Vlads going, and a lot of micro on his part. And just in general, he does tons of damage. Really hard once he gets that BKB to actually stop him from killing at least 2 of your supports. But I really like the magic resist buff. That's going to make just more effective in team fights and not just blow up instantly like they've been doing as of late. And the Howl bonus increase. I mean, while it's minor number-wise, it does affect everything, essentially. So, that's going to be a buff across the board for your team. And I don't know, 5 extra damage. Can't complain about that.
Yeah, I mean, I like those base stat increases because that's probably where he needs the most help. Because like you said, once he gets up a couple of those core items, he's doing fine. I mean, and just getting the Necro book up, like he's able to do so much for his team. And Howl's always, I think, been a strong spell. So I like the fact that they buff that a little bit, and it sort of plays more to that pushing strategy. The Wolves, it's still like, they're just so health weak.
They are.
That, it's really not that difficult even for supports to try and deal with them in the laning phase if he's trying to be a lane hero. So it's nice that you have to focus them, or like you have to take the time to auto attack them because of the magic resist increase, so that they actually have some form of survivability in the fight.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm very curious to see if we get to see people like Puppy, who have obviously been pro Lycan in the past, try to look to pick him up now and see if they can make something work with him. But the last hero that I actually want to talk about from the patch, because we've actually managed to do pretty much 2 whole episodes on this one set of changes, is the Witch Doctor, which is like one that we didn't talk about at all, I think, last week. The 200 increased cast range on the ultimate, the Voodoo Restoration AoE increased from 350 to 500. Voodoo Restoration mana cost over time reduced to being 50% of the heal amount, so it's actually reduced by 6 at the last rank. And Paralyzing Cast now lasting 5 seconds on Illusion. I actually think all of these are really sizable buffs, and it's not that we see that the Witch Doctor's picked up super often, but I specifically remember us talking about a game where Yol from Roxkiss actually picked up the Witch Doctor, and it showed to be pretty effective against the Wisp combination because they guaranteed several stuns together. And it's neat to sort of see that Paralyzing Cask is now almost a harder counter to the Manta style or Illusion heroes in general.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to stop them in their tracks. And my favorite of those is the Death Ward cast range for sure. I mean, he has to put himself in such a vulnerable position to really do the damage. Now, granted, they didn't buff his other ability, the Maledict, which still has just a horrible range. It really is just so hard to cast that. So you're still kind of going to be vulnerable. But either way, you don't have to get the Maledict. If you can still be safe and put that ulti in the back of a fight, that obviously is probably going to be the better player for you. So I like it. I've always loved the hero. It's one of the supports that can, like a CM that just turns a fight with their ultimate if you're not careful. So really something else. And I don't know. I've always liked to see him picked up, but I don't know. I don't know if he can actually get used still. I want him to, but I mean, do you think this could be a turning point, or is this just like cool?
I mean, I'll say game 101 for BDLM.
There we go.
Probably be a Witch Doctor.
That should be your backup. That should be your backup
enough for you. Yeah, it should. I mean, like you were saying, the Maledict didn't get changed, so the Pub Stomp spell did not. But all the things that I think make him a viable pro pick all got nice increases. I mean, even in just the radius of the Voodoo Restoration, I think is really nice. And that's, of course, always been sort of the place that we've seen him place, and the sort of core healing, or not core, but being in the middle of the team, just regenerating everybody up to help keep a push going. And of course, the Voodoo Restoration, people wouldn't put points into it. They keep it low so that they can afford the mana cost. Now it's not as costly to increase the points that you have spent in it. And like you were saying, the Death Ward before was pretty hard to get off effectively, and now you actually have a little bit more of a safe range so you can sit back and try and get that channel. So I really like them all. I think he's strong. I mean, is he going to appear in every game? Of course not. No. But I definitely still am curious to see how he would work in that sort of counter to the IO, who is still a prevalent hero.
That's true. That's definitely true. It could be used that way. Like we did discuss in that one episode about how well it was doing for most of the game, but and now that Io's been nerfed, not gonna be. I mean, he'll still get picked, but it's not gonna be as effective as once was. Obviously, as we discussed for pretty lengthy times. Did we discuss Train Protector in the last patch? Because
No.
he got hit with a nerf bat, pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty good here. Basically, the living armor cooldown changed from just 15 flat to 32, 26, 2014, and the mana cost doubled to 50. Leech Seed changes, blah, 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 but the living armor is the essentially the big deal here. That's huge. His early game is where he's the strongest, and now they've essentially said, no, you're going to now be a lot weaker in the early game. So, has this kind of just shunned him out of it completely?
Probably. I mean, I hate
Nice
to
Frog
say
Y, it's your favorite hero.
Buff, nerd. I don't know that I like him as much anymore. I mean, it's really just that was all about the living armor before, and now you're gonna make living armor worse. You're not gonna always have it available. You know, you might have to be more careful with when you're using it. You can't just say this person's at 90% health. Let's throw a living armor on them.
Mm-hmm.
They did try to buff the Nature's Guys. You know, if the ultimate
Yes!
doesn't do any damage. Like,
Yeah, could they give him a little love in somewhere else at least? Like, come on.
Leech Seed did get better. I mean, its duration was increased too. That's nice, but really, is that enough? The yellow camp's closer, so he's gonna be. Let's say you're playing him safe lane, tri lane. If you're not pulling, you're gonna just be able to clear that yellow easy camp and then be somewhat nearby to participate if the fight breaks out. But yeah, I don't know, man. That's probably enough to take him out, or if not take him out, I think it'll be really specific uses.
Yep.
Sad day.
I'm not too sad. I never liked that stupid living armor, to be honest. And I've always hated trees. That's why I played Timbersol. So,
Of course, Bat Rider, you just firefly him down.
Gotta go anti-tree build. And now with the two heroes, well, I know it was Clockwork and who else? Another hero that destroys trees with their moves now. So you gotta go the whole anti-tree team. And
yes, if they push back.
Just be team anti-smoky or something. Alright. That's all I got.
Oh, poor bear. That's pretty much all we had to cover in our cast. It was very, very nice. Very good discussion. I'm glad we had it. It's pretty swell. I learned a lot. I hope you did.
Me too.
I will say before we peace bounce that you happened to point out to me before that we always like to look on the Dota 2 wiki because it's a nice little site. And if you look at the unreleased content, there is art for Earth Spirit and Ember Spirit, and that is crazy because Earth Spirit is one of the newest heroes in the game. And he's already got art, and we still don't have Legion Commander, but I can't play her anyway. So at this point, maybe I don't want her to come out because I'm not going to be able to do anything. I'm just going to have to burn through my Vita games first.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, you've got a lot of games to go before you can play another hero by choice, my friend. But yeah, I just wanted to say, I mean, with Skywrath and Timber came out before other heroes as well. I mean, they're not afraid to bring these heroes into the game. In fact, it seems like they're all about it. Like, they really want these, they're excited, they want to see how they do, and now obviously, well, I'm not going to say obviously, they were put into Dota 1, but there's going to be heroes going down the road that it almost feels like are probably just going to be made primarily for Dota 2, and I feel like Dota 1 is really, after especially this patch we discussed how some of these changes can be ported from or to Dota 1, I think that might be the direction. They're going to just push their limits and see what they can do with these heroes in this game, and it's going to be really exciting for all of us.
I must say that Ember Spirit looks suspiciously like Jafar when he becomes a genie from Aladdin.
I was thinking like Mulan, but like red, like a guy in Mulan, but red. I don't know. That looks like our friend Dunn when he's played a game of Dota and just
always. Yes, that is perfect. That's a perfect description.
I hope he doesn't hear this episode. All right.
Yeah. Definitely go check that out, guys, because that's awesome. I'm gonna again plug that documentary because that was a great watch. Even though you have to read the subtitles, it was totally worth it. Please go do that. And I will one last time plug my Twitter at BDLM Dota, all one word.
And at DoD on Demand, follow everything.
Follow everything everywhere in the Twitter and the Facebook and the YouTube, and it'll all be great everywhere. Do you have any other plugs, shout-outs?
Post more comments on YouTube. Not that we have a problem with Ramzor, but we want to hear everyone's opinion, and we want to hear some of you quiet birds out there. So leave us some feedback, leave us some loving, and thanks for listening.
Absolutely. So go out there, guys, play some awesome Dota, mess around with this patch some more, go have some fun out there. We'll see you next time.